confirmed number of new coronavirus cases reported in Los Angeles County over the last 24 hours is 5,100, with 103 additional deaths. Here in Torrance, 43 additional cases were reported with no new deaths. Welcome to COVID-19 Today. I'm Christine Lee. It's Wednesday, February 9th. The Omicron surge continues to decline and much of the state will relax some masking rules, but LA County says we're not there yet. Public health officials here caution that post-surge does not indicate an end to the pandemic, but rather that metrics are stabilizing across the county. Numbers are trending down across the board for the most part, including hospitalizations. At last count, there were slightly more than 2,700 patients with COVID-19 at county hospitals. Public health will consider LA County to be post-surge when daily hospitalizations drop below 2,500 for 7 consecutive days. Once LA County enters post-surge, masking will no longer be required in outdoor spaces at mega events, childcare facilities, and K-12 schools. The masking requirement at indoor establishments will continue until LA County has 2 consecutive weeks at or below moderate transmission, or vaccines have been available for children under 5 for 8 weeks, and there are no emerging reports of significantly circulating new variants of concern that threaten vaccine effectiveness. Due to state regulations, indoor masking at K-12 schools, childcare facilities, youth, and other settings will still be required. For more information, go to torranceca.gov/COVID-19. The World Health Organization expects the Omicron subvariant BA.2 to become more common around the world. Most states in the U.S. confirmed the presence of this new variant with 460 total cases so far. Officials say they're still trying to figure out if the more transmissible strain can reinfect those who already got infected by the original Omicron variant. They emphasize that there is no indication of a difference in illness severity between the 2 variants, though research is ongoing. Scientists are currently tracking 4 different versions of Omicron. Researchers in Denmark found that BA.2 is about 1.5 times more transmissible than the original Omicron and more likely to infect those who are vaccinated and even boosted. But fully vaccinated individuals are less likely to spread the virus than the unvaccinated. Officials say the shots remain highly effective at preventing severe disease and death. They urge people who have access to get vaccinated and wear masks indoors. Scientists discovered that white-tailed deer can carry the Omicron variant. They say it's a potential sign that deer and other animals could eventually create a new COVID-19 variant of concern. In a peer-reviewed study published on Tuesday, authors say white-tailed deer in Iowa carried the Omicron variant, and it was the first time that the coronavirus has been so widespread in animals. The research was conducted by scientists at Penn State University and the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. They reviewed hundreds of deer tissue samples. About 1/3 of the samples were positive for COVID-19, matching the number of infections in humans in Iowa at the time as well. Fortunately, there are no signs that animals can transmit the coronavirus back to humans, but researchers say the longer-term widespread circulation of the coronavirus in deer would give it more opportunity to mutate, potentially allowing for new variants to spill over into people or other animals. Businesses across the country are reducing their hours due to the pandemic-driven labor shortage. Chipotle, KFC, McDonald's, and Starbucks are just a few of the companies that had to reduce working hours at some of their locations. McDonald's locations across the U.S. cut their hours by 10% due to staffing shortages. And Starbucks announced that nearly 9,000 of its stores across the country will have modified store hours due to rising concerns over customer and worker safety. Retailers are also having trouble holding on to their workers. Last month, Macy's reduced its operating hours by 2 hours, 4 days a week. Economists say what we're seeing now is the result of the so-called Great Resignation, where a record 4.5 million workers voluntarily quit their jobs last November. Well, if you're planning to take out your significant other on Valentine's Day, make sure you have enough money. Restaurants are charging more for meals to offset the ongoing staffing challenges and higher food costs. For example, the price of a good steak spiked 154%, according to data compiled by personal finance site The Balance. Many other Valentine's Day gifts will cost a lot more. The average price for a dozen roses jumped 22% from last year. Assorted chocolates are up 9%. Last week, Hershey announced its plans to increase prices across all segments as a way to drive sales growth. And imported champagne, which is already more expensive than other sparkling wines, rose to an average of $53 a bottle, up 18% from the year before. Still, people are expected to spend up to $23.9 billion this Valentine's Day. That would be the second highest year on record, according to the National Retail Federation. LA Rams fans have an interactive way to get excited about the Super Bowl. The team has 2 pop-up Newsstand locations, which will open tomorrow and Friday. One location is at the iconic Randy's Donuts in Inglewood, and the other is at the 3rd Street Promenade. Visitors will receive an exclusive playoff newspaper and other limited giveaways. There will also be special appearances by Rams legends, Rampage, and the Rams cheerleaders. Season ticket holders who show their membership cards will receive an exclusive Rams player shirt while supplies last. The Inglewood location opens both days from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., and the 3rd Street Promenade location will be open from 12 noon to 6 p.m. Well, the Del Amo Fashion Center will soon offer a new way for shoppers to quickly grab a bite without getting in line. The mall partnered with Kitchen United Mix to introduce a program called Grab, Go, Eat. It launches at Del Amo on Monday, February 21st. Customers can order from multiple vendors through one transaction and decide how they want to pick it up. One of the options will be through a smart locker. There will be 2 locker locations at the mall. Other options include curbside, specially designated pickup centers, and even home delivery. Officials say this is the nation's first multi-restaurant ordering to-go experience and the only destination that allows foodies to order meals from more than 10 restaurants all on the same bill. Every other week, we share a Wellness Wednesday story to help you stay on top of this pandemic, both emotionally and physically. Well, as we head into our 2nd year of living with this COVID-19 pandemic, it's becoming more and more uncommon to know someone who has been infected with this virus. Pew Research says about 7 out of 10 people now know someone who got COVID-19. And recent insights from a Gallup poll reveals many Americans are flip-flopping psychologically as the coronavirus continues to make waves in our lives. Last May, the majority of Americans said their lives were at least somewhat back to normal, and 84% of them remained optimistic. Just a couple of months later, the pandemic optimism got cut to 40% as the Delta variant made its grand entrance, then dropped even lower to just 15% in August. As fall arrived, people's spirits lifted somewhat, and optimism rebounded to 51% in October, only to be dashed again in December to 31% thanks to the Omicron variant. In a November poll, only 34% of Americans described their mental or emotional health as excellent, a nearly 10% drop from pre-pandemic days. As the variant continues to threaten our mood and emotional well-being, therapist Melissa Dumas joins us to share some tips on how to best cope with our current reality. Melissa, it's great to see you again.
Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for having me back.
So we first connected almost exactly 1 year ago, and you shared some
Yeah.
great tips on coping through COVID. How has 1 extra year of living through this pandemic affected us all?
It has, in some ways, gotten worse. I think, at some point, a lot of people were feeling hopeful that things were getting back to normal. I air quote that because whatever your version of that normalcy looks like. However, people are feeling more exhausted, more anxious, a little bit more hopeless about what does this mean? Even the excitement of like, oh, yeah, life is going to get back to normal. As you saw the spike in the mood changing during May, and then things dipped and changed again, people are just feeling extremely exhausted.
Yeah, that describes me exactly. And I feel like it was more difficult than usual to ring in 2022, just knowing how
Hmm.
prevalent the Omicron variant has been and how
Right.
unending this pandemic feels. Now, is this a common feeling, and what can we do mentally to remotivate ourselves?
It's extremely common. I'm seeing it a lot in my clients in private practice. I'm also seeing it in my personal and professional circle. I would say probably less than 5% of those that I've surrounded myself personally and professionally have seemed excited about the new year. Most have been like, well, we'll see what happens. It's like, they've lost their excitement and like the newness that a new year usually brings. Some people are intimidated and afraid to make new year resolutions or goals or plans because things seem so uncertain. One day we're allowed to do this and the next day it changes, or within the next few weeks it changes. So people are afraid to make plans, especially long-term plans during this time, which is understood.
Yeah, so then, I mean, is there something you did that motivated, you to still just have that little ounce of positivity?
Right, absolutely. So one thing that I have found to be helpful is to try to focus on the now. Absolutely, when you go into a new year, you're thinking about what this new year may bring. But because we have been so traumatized the previous year and what the year brought, we don't want to take that same energy with us into the new year. So even if we can just focus on the small things, and my version of small may be someone else's version of big. Like for example, in previous years, we had a hard time getting water, toilet paper, things of that nature, and to even be able to get those things, it was like, yes, I got to the store and I scored with disinfectant and toilet paper. So even if we can find something that we can focus on that is helpful for us, sometimes with my children, we even talk about like, let's be grateful that we woke up this morning. Let's be grateful that, we opened our eyes and we're in our right state of mind, because that means that there's still a plan for our life. So, sometimes even finding that one thing, another colleague of mine talked about how his dog wakes him up in the morning and that's his joy. And so finding whatever that joy is for you, whether it's your baby waking you up, your spouse, or the neighbor's dog, like whatever it is, to remind you that you're still living and that there's still life to be lived. And then also to give yourself grace, because it's understood too that, you could be frustrated about the way things are going and frustrated about not being able to make long-term plans. But if you can look at what's one thing that I can be excited about, then that can be a ripple effect into finding attitude and multitude of other things to be excited about.
I love that, taking everything one day at a time and just being grateful for
Yes.
the present stuff. Yeah. And you've heard about the Gallup poll findings on people's optimism levels going up and
Hmm.
down throughout last
Right.
year. Is
Right.
there any way that we can try to prevent that from happening again?
I think I'm a big fan of keeping record, keeping record of the things that you are excited about, the things that you are happy about, keeping record of things that make you feel good, that make you feel positive. So even if that means writing a daily note to yourself to remind you of who you are, to remind you of the positive things that you have going in your life, even if it's one thing, that's a big deal. And even sometimes keeping record means taking pictures. I think we all have access to devices or smartphones. And so even if that's taking a picture, that could be taking a picture during a walk where you see a flower blossoming to remind you about life or to remind you about nature. So sometimes taking some time and scrolling back to the notes you've written to yourself, or maybe there's some things that other people have said to you too that you want to be reminded of. Screenshotting that text message that a dear friend sent you that made you smile. We have to go back and look at record things that reminded us of the joy that we once experienced, because some days are going to be harder than others. And so in order to continue to create that positivity, it's nice to have a record of when times were positive for you.
I did take a lot of pictures of flowers in my neighborhood, and I never did that. It just became a pandemic thing. And I also finally caved in and got a dog last year, as many Americans did
Uh-huh.
during the pandemic. Her name is
Uh-huh.
Somi, and she really helps me both
Oh.
emotionally and physically. She's just so cute. Now, what are some tips on how we can make some small changes in our lives to stay active and mentally healthy?
Right. One of the things, you shared that you got a dog. My children have been asking for a dog, and I'm like, no way, I'm not ready, because we know where the responsibility will fall upon as a parent. But one of the things that we have been doing during the pandemic is more bike riding. We've all always owned a bike, but the kids would go outside and play on their bike, or I would ride my bike to the gym. But now we do more of a collective bike riding. So I would say we've gotten to know our neighborhood in ways that we didn't before. We've gotten to know our local parks and beaches in ways that we didn't before. And so it's just a reminder that just even some quick change of scenery, especially when we're spending our days working remotely or working and staring at a screen, a change in scenery can really refresh us. So stepping outside, going on a bike ride, taking your dog for a walk, things of that nature, getting some fresh air. And when you're out in those new environments, finding ways to ground yourself. So even incorporating your five senses. So Christine, next time you take your dog for a walk, just noticing, what do I smell? What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? Do I feel the breeze on my skin or the sun on my skin? What do I taste? So maybe I taste that breakfast that I had, that protein smoothie. So whatever it is that you are experiencing in that moment helps us to stay focused in the moment, because we can easily go on a bike ride or take our dog for a walk and then be so focused on the bad news that we heard on the news this morning, or so focused on the bad news that we read on social media. And so if we can find ourselves to just live in the moment, to just practice grounding ourselves in those moments. And the easiest way to do that, if you're not sure, is just checking in with your five senses and asking yourself, what do you notice?
That's great advice. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked earlier about keeping a note for yourself. So that is extremely important. Also, giving yourself the reminders that you're not alone in this, that we're all collectively living in this experience of collective trauma, and so reminding ourselves of that. And I think the other common thing that people are experiencing is grief. People are grieving the way life was before. People are grieving the way that they could travel in ways that they don't have to travel now, or being able to gather in ways that they can't gather now. And so being gentle with ourselves and knowing that grief is a process, that no 2 days may look the same. One day you may be like, all right, I accept it for what it is. And then the next day you may be angry again. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that anything's wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're quote crazy or anything like that. It's just that you are experiencing life in the way that it is happening. And I think reminding yourself too that there's so much uncertainty. We don't have an end date. Sometimes we can cope better when we know, like, oh, this is going to be over on this particular date. And since we don't have that, it leaves us with a lot of uncertainty. So ground yourself, remind yourself of the positives, move your body, advocate for your own health and well-being, and absolutely see a therapist if you can.
Absolutely. And those are some great points. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us, Melissa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And you can learn more about Melissa's therapy practice at youhelpyou.com. Torrance City Council members met last night to conduct city business. They authorized a purchase order for new and remanufactured engines and parts for an amount of up to $828,000 over 3 years. They also accepted and filed the latest COVID-19 recovery update from LA County and the state. And the city leaders discussed and postponed the 2022 Armed Forces Day Parade. Staff will bring back an item to discuss other ways to honor our military heroes in lieu of the parade. You can watch complete replays of the meeting on our website, YouTube, Facebook, and of course, right here on City Cable. Well, before we go, at the end of each program, we like to share feel-good stories from our community. Pictures, images, and videos that remind us of how resilient our community is and how Torrance truly cares. Torrance Bakery and a local bakery in Cincinnati, Ohio called Buskin are having a friendly competition that is centered on the Super Bowl and also on giving back to local charities. Each business created one-of-a-kind treats featuring both the LA Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. They made a $2,500 bet where if the Rams win, Buskin Bakery will donate the money to the Torrance YMCA Youth Institute program. But if the Bengals win, the Torrance Bakery will donate to Seven Brothers Farm in Ohio, which offers team building opportunities for the youth and provides education about running a farm. What a fun way to enjoy the Super Bowl and help others at the same time. Now, if you have a great story, an upcoming event, a photo or video you'd like to share, email us at covid19today@torranceca.gov. We'd love to hear from you. Well, that's our update for COVID-19 Today. We'll see you back here tomorrow as Bella Shaw brings you the latest. Be safe, stay healthy, and thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.